I've got another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. This lesson is titled, That Which is Bruised. I'm going to read from Leviticus chapter 22, verse 24, because many people still need to understand this, to hear it, to keep it in mind. So Leviticus 22, verse 24, Ye shall not offer unto the Lord that which is bruised, or crushed, or broken, or cut, neither shall ye make any offering thereof in your land. So for all the Hebrew Messianics and the Christians who use the New Testament, and both those groups say that the Apostle Paul is correct, and they said that he said that the New Testament is basically built on the Old Testament, right? Because he said the Torah, or the Old Testament, is written for our understanding, for our learning. The idea then is that it's the foundation for the New Testament according to what he is saying. I think different. I think the New Testament was the original concept, the original plan, and an Old Testament or Torah had to be written from African beliefs and African spiritual systems in order to pull off the New Testament Christos. Remember that there is what we refer today as a Christ consciousness. That was there a long time ago for ancient Africans, and we know the whole story of the Ankh in Egypt and the Nile Valley beliefs and so on, and even coming back from ancient India, which was populated originally by Africans. They had this, like I said, what we call today this Christ thinking, this Christ consciousness, this becoming the Christ, to say that you should become the Christ. And so the world would be a better place when we all become the Christ, quote unquote, the Christ. So the idea is not to look for a Christ to come from heaven, but you should become the Christ. But the New Testament kind of masks it so that you think that you are not the Christ. So you won't deal with personal inner development and finding your inner strengths, your inner self and so on. But you will try to find that strength from the outside by looking at this Christ presented in the New Testament. And we know the anointed one in the teachings of early Africans and in ancient Egypt, the crocodile oil, the Messiah, the anointed oil of the crocodile. And that was speaking of the anointed one, the Messiah. So the whole Messiah thing is an ancient African spiritual belief. Now, this is why I'm saying to you, it is my belief, which I'm going to talk about more and more as time goes on, that this is the New Testament idea in the people who conquered Egypt and conquered us as they moved around the world conquering us, to present this ancient African, Egyptian, Nile Valley teaching of the Christ consciousness, or you really being the Christ, each person becoming that Christ, or coming to the understanding that they are that Christ. And so they made a Torah to make it look like something else was there before, and that Christ is a fulfillment of it. So you will dig and reach for an Old Testament law system when you should be seeing the Christ thinking as more of an original thinking, and look for that inside yourself to develop yourself. Instead, they give you the thing in a kind of reverse. See, because if you have the Christ consciousness first, and you are so minded that inside of you is that which needs to be developed or found out, and you need to go on this odyssey, internal odyssey or internal journey, to become that Christ, or to find that part of you that would help you to express a better you in the world, and we would have a better world and so on if everyone would live according to those internal values. So they went in and took those concepts of the inner you and made a law system out of it, which then becomes a Torah, but puts that first, instead of the Christ consciousness or New Testament first in the Bible. They put the Christ consciousness that was used to create the Torah or the rules, they put that first in the Torah to let you think that that's what came first. But think that when the first person was on earth, or the first people, they would more be looking internally and not to laid out law systems. So when the first people were on earth, they would have looked internally to find the way in life, internally to find what food to eat, internally to find, how they're going to get over there, how they're going to travel, how they're going to build up themselves and so on, how they're going to connect with what's inside of them, which we would call like meditation today and so on, right? Inner thinking, inner reflection. So they would have more thought like this, of reflecting on inner things. And then and also as they reflected on those inner things, they would, think of the sun in the sky and meditate on the moon, and the stars, and meditate as to what those luminaries are and what it means, how they move in the sky, what their movements are, nature, the trees growing, where do the trees come from? They just come up out of the ground just like that on their own. And they would meditate on the life and death of these trees and whatever else, and the plants and animals around them. They'd meditate on the world like that, from an inner standpoint, because remember, there were no schools. There was no Torah school. There was no school of the prophets. There was no academy the way we see today, or university or college and so on. There was no Bible college and so on. There was no regular, quote unquote, secular school system to teach you math and English and so on. They meditated internally about the things that they felt inside that no one taught them, and what they saw in nature. And the inner Christ consciousness, or the inner development, the inner consciousness that resided on the inside, that they tapped into and kind of blended their thoughts with what they were seeing on the outside of them, let them make the rules or the laws. So the Christ consciousness, or the inner reflections, which would be like a New Testament, the inner reflections would have been first, and then they would make laws and rules of that when societies started to grow in ancient times. So a law system, or what we think of a Torah today, teachings of the Torah, a law system would come later on in time, in ancient times, after man reflected on the inner part of him that allowed him to have world consciousness, or God consciousness, if you want to call it that, in the world. He would have world consciousness when he began to say, I'm feeling something, and then he would reason it out, think it out, experiment with things and so on, and then come up with a rule or a law or a teaching. A Torah means teaching that says we have 5 senses, and one of them is a sense of touch. You see that? So the inner reflection, or the consciousness reflection, or the Christ consciousness, or the New Testament Christ consciousness would have come first for humanity, or first in the most ancient of times, and then a law system would come later on. The New Testament was the original creation in the mind of the deceivers, and they created a law system, or a Torah, in order to express the teachings of the ancient Africans who had a quote-unquote Christ consciousness from the start of time. New Testament was the original intention. Torah came later, but was made and put in the front of the book to deceive you to think that there was a Hebrew Israelite nation, empire with a magical God. Show me that magical God today. Show me the magical God that pushes the sun across the sky. And then I'll tell you about Thor, Indra, and all the other gods, and those two are really the same anyway, who push the sun and so on and planets across the sky. You see that? So show me the magical God that will let you prove stuff, because in the Torah, he proved things. And I still have the lesson to do to teach you about what Samuel taught us about proof. You cannot rise up in 2018, 2019, 1999, or whenever, 25, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever time it is, or right now, talking about people telling you on the street or in their Hebrew Israelite camps that you are Hebrew Israelite. from ancient times and not get proof for it. To tell you that they're flipping through a Strong's Concordance or a Hebrew lexicon is not proof. That is just reading to you books with words that you can find meanings and breakdowns for those words in. Proof of God is proof of God. It is demonstration by God. It is an exposition of the power and miracles of God. That's why in the Torah, when he wanted to prove himself to people, he would prove himself to people. He wouldn't flip through a book or tell them, flip through your scrolls and I'll show you what it means. He would prove, he would demonstrate stuff. The book was for you. I told you a long time ago, God does not read the Bible. He does not read the Torah. He does not believe in the Torah. You do. He doesn't read the Bible. You read it. That's why they publish the Bible, publish the Torah scrolls and the Torah today for man. They don't publish it for God because God does not read books. Man reads books. But when you wanted to prove stuff to like Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh, and then he starts talking to him about the gourd and the worm and so on, or you wanted to demonstrate something in the Babylonian Empire or to Israel and so on, he would come up with all kinds of stuff and he would just deal with them in a miraculous kind of way. Elijah got fire coming down to sap up the fire and the sacrifice. In Babylon, mene, tekel, upharsin. He dealt with Jonah going into the so-called fish belly and also talking to him about the gourd, withering and so on, and saying, you know, what is it to you if I choose to spare those people in Nineveh? And so he would deal with people in a way where they could not, in the book, in the text, deny that something supernatural was happening. That is proof. Moses said he wanted to see God. He said, stand by the rock right here and hide yourself. I'm going to pass by and you can see. Joshua, after the death of Moses, lingered in the temple, lingered by the temple as the presence and the glory of God came. And it's like this sort of like tangible kind of presence or mystical mist or whatever you might want to think of it as. Israel came out of Egypt and they saw the pillar of fire that led them by night and cloud by day. Moses going up to the burning bush saw a demonstration of a fire, a burning bush. But notice the proof that I'm talking about is something that is clear to the individual. So when they tell you on the streets or in your Hebrew camp or in your Christian church that God said this and God said that, you must prove it. When they say Jesus came to die for your sins, you must prove it. Jesus must have a way to prove to you today that he died on Calvary. Don't tell me he gave you the Holy Ghost speaking in tongues, because I already dealt with that long time ago and showed you that the Holy Ghost deception on the day of Pentecost was fake and it was a lie 2,000 years ago. Nobody got Holy Ghost speaking in tongues 2,000 years ago in an upper room. Nobody. That never happened. That was a planned exercise and they pulled it off smoothly, but the truth was always known and it's resurfacing again. That is a deception, and I've got another lesson yet to do on that, already recorded, of the New Testament Pentecostal stuff, just not edited as yet. Alright? So the proof, you must prove to me on the street that I'm a Hebrew Israelite. You must not tell me history, you must prove it along with the history. Eldad the Danite, I was just trying to make up a lesson this past couple days ago. I'll look into it some more, but that's weird to me and that's very strange, and I don't believe that Eldad the Danite stuff that was planned, telling you he's coming, but I think it's Rudolph Windsor about the Eldad the Danite coming and talking about some great Hebrew or Israelite kingdom from the Sahara region or wherever he said. I think it's page 92 in his book. You all have read the book, Babylon to Timbuktu, I think it is. But you see, to tell someone is not enough. You must get proof. You see how they did this trick? It's to tell you a lot of stories over time, and then the big explosion of Hebrew Israelite for the past 30 to 50 years is then to balloon the teachings that were seeded in over the past couple centuries, so that you cannot deny, because 500 years ago, 200 years ago, somebody talked about it. This black rabbi from Africa and whatever talked about it. So you say, yeah, see how long it's been talked about. No, where is the proof? Where is the proof? So Eldad the Danite didn't prove anything. He told a story. Just like people today have stories in India and other places that a god named Thor did this and did that. Agni, the fire god, did this and did that. Do you understand that the Mount Sinai story of the fire coming down on Sinai is the same as the Agni, the fire god, coming down upon a mountain in India? Did they prove that to their people, or do the people just believe because they were told that Agni, the fire god, descended, licking up butter with like, I think 7 tongues or something like that, licking up sacrificial butter? Did they prove that any more than someone has proved to you that your Torah has a God that really did descend on Sinai with fire? How are you going to know which God descended on a mountain? And why is a Torah God any set apart when he can do something as powerful as Agni, the fire God, descending on his own mountain over there? So that means that your Torah God of the Hebrews is not any more powerful than what Agni or some other God can do for some other people on earth. Your God of the Torah, Yah or Yahweh or Yahweh or Yahuwah, has not done anything that is different and more magnificent than the other gods of the earth. Your God needs to prove himself. You are not an Israelite until... Because he said, ye are my witnesses, until he can prove that you are not a witness of anything other than that you witness some people teaching you on the street that you are a Hebrew Israelite, or in your church that you are now a Christian and you are saved because you got baptized and received Jesus. All right? So the proof of God is proof of God. God must demonstrate something. Demonstrate, and it must be so clear. It's not just a fire like with Moses seeing the bush burn, because bush would catch on fire in the desert. It was hot all the time. The sun would just cause it to ignite, and so it was common, I'm told, for bushes to just catch on fire sometimes from the extreme heat. But something had to happen differently this time for Moses to say, I'm going to go up and see what's going on with that fire. But when he went there, the God, if he was real in the book, to show himself real in the book, could not just simply let it be just a general fire. He had to do something different because it was just another bush on fire like the other bush. He had to do something different about that bush. Like I'm telling you, if Agni, the fire god, descended upon another mountain for another people, and other gods did miracles for their people, your God has to do something different when he descends on your Mount of Sinai, Mountain Sinai, to show you that something is different about that. So what he did in the story with Moses was to then let an angel appear, who they say is God, in the fire, Elohim, to show him that this is not your regular fire. It is not your regular Agni or another regular God descending on their own mountain in their own myths, in their own countries and their own religious systems. But this is different from them. I have an Elohim right here. If he's proving it in the book, but you can't see it today, because the proof of God cannot die out after time. That's why he said, ye are my witnesses. Because you cannot be witness. If the witness dies, then God is not provable anymore. But he says, ye are my witnesses. That's why it goes on to say that a part of the curse would be, people will be saying, are these the people of the Lord? Why? Because you are still going to witness of him even in your captivity. They are supposed to know. Still, even when your God stopped operating for you in the land that you say is yours, when you're in other lands, he should still be provable. You can't prove your God today. Now they're making fun of you on CNN and all these places, right? You must be able to prove him. So your God appeared in the fire, but Agni appeared as well and licked up butter, sacrificial butter. So he must do something specific that cannot be denied for you. What has been done for you by your God after you heard you are a Hebrew Israelite, that will make you know that it is true? And what has Jesus done for you that will let you know in the Christian church that he really was strung up on a cross and died for you? But it goes on here, ye shall not offer unto the Lord that which is bruised, crushed, broken, and so on, right? Now look at the word offer. Karab, it says to come near, approach, enter into, draw near, right? Now understand that the actual sacrifice is the crucifixion. That's why they'll say they whipped him, they bruised him and so on, and then they crucified him. You all know that the killing of the animal was the actual sacrifice. No Hebrew Israelite nation, priest back then, would have had you beat up, like I've said at other times before, the sacrifice the day before, the night before. Chain up the animal and beat it up and so on, the lamb, and then present it for sacrifice the next day, blooded up, beaten up, with the neck almost broken, the legs broken and so on, bloodied up with crown of thorns on it or whatever, or with knife wounds in it, bleeding, walking like it's limping and so on, till they have to pick it up and carry, like they had to pick up his cross, Simon, and help him carry it. They didn't do that. The sacrifice, the moment of sacrifice is the slitting of the throat to take the life of the animal. If Jesus is the Lamb of Calvary, that's going to save Gentiles or save the Hebrews and bring the two kingdoms back together so that the two sticks will become one, then he must be presented unscathed, untouched, unbroken in his limbs, his bones and so on, not bruised. Right? So he said, you shall not offer this stuff. So remember, to offer now, to karab, to offer is to come near, to draw near with it. So what he's saying here now, you shall not offer or karab or come near or draw near to me with any kind of sacrifice that is bruised already, that is crushed already, that is broken already or cut. Do not draw near unto me. Don't come near to me with a sacrifice that has been whipped by Romans, that has been cut in his flesh with the cat of nine tails. Like I told you, with the whip, at the end of it, jagged pieces of metal or sheep bone that would rip into his skin, into his flesh, a bleeding, bloody mess. Do not draw near unto me with a body that has scabs in it, ripped flesh, blood, bleeding, with head that was ruptured, with crown of thorns. Do not approach unto me with any kind of sacrifice that has been bruised, because the sacrifice is not yet done. The only time the bruising should occur is at the moment of sacrifice. The whipping and so on, that was a sort of punishment, yes, but it was not the sacrifice. The sacrifice is the kill. And the sacrifices of the Hebrews did not include punishing the sacrificial animal any time prior to the actual sacrifice. The sacrifice was presented whole, without blemish, and then it was sacrificed or it was killed. Do not approach unto the Most High with anything that is bruised. I hope you enjoyed this other weekly Bible lesson today in the New Testament This Fake series. Share this with people that you know need to understand this. More importantly though, share it with your own heart, not just your ears. Search it out, think it through for yourself. I'll see you in the next New Testament Is Fake.